Oh, so okay, now you've been evangelized by some people whilst you were just randomly just going about your day, and then you were introduced to a cult. Tell me more.
Yes. Yes. Of course, it wasn't immediately apparent to me that it was a cult. It took some time before it was revealed to me. But that's why but at the same time, I did notice some differences and strange things. So some of the things I've shared aren't necessarily things that will catch your eyes initially and point to it being a cult. Because, for example, the fact that there's different ethnicities doesn't necessarily mean that it's a cult. Why? Because the gospel is for the whole world. It's for all nations, tribes, and tongues. It's for everyone, right? Regardless of their ethnicity or the fact that they were really nice and kind. Oftentimes when you meet true believers, people in the part of the kingdom of God, they're very lovely, they're very kind, they're the most loving, generous, kind, soft people you ever meet in this on this side of eternity. So those weren't necessarily um points of suspicion that it's a cult. However, because it was new to me, it was very different to what I was used to. I guess I had a heightened level of just okay, let me just be watchful here, sort of thing, because I don't know what is. Yeah, I've never been in such an environment, and because I'm very observant, I'm very attentive as well. I Though I may not speak on it, I'm always just taking notes of on things. So these were the first two things that stood out to me. But then now one of the next things that stood out to me was that the way they preached was as if that they're the only true church, and every other church is wrong, right? So that is obviously unbiblical. There's no such thing as one true church, right? Because the church itself is the body of Christ. You know what I'm saying? Yes, unfortunately, we have different denominations today, which I don't believe was God's intention. However, we see in the book of Revelations there were seven different churches, right? All with different issues in the churches. Out of the seven, five Jesus wasn't pleased with, and only two he was pleased with, right? But that didn't the ones that he wasn't pleased with didn't mean they weren't true churches, if that makes sense, right? Even though he asked them to repent. So this already foundation is like, there's something interesting here. Maybe there's some truth. At the time I was like, because I don't know much about Christianity. Maybe all the other churches I've gone to were wrong. I don't know, but at the same time it was just a bit weird. So I shared this with my parents, and they already like raised suspicion too. But they felt okay, at least while he's going to church, it's cool. Let him continue seeking God. Maybe it's still a good place. So everyone is still like awareness is increased, but it's like okay, it's fine. There's nothing too, in a sense. Because I wasn't too familiar with doctrine and theology at the time as well. So I wasn't too versed in all of this stuff. Um, but then there's also like with their system. So now I know theologically, a lot of what they say and preach can be sound, but they don't necessarily practice what they preach as well in some areas too, you know. And so another thing that they did is as soon as you come and you start going to the church, they disciple you and they want you to get baptized as quick as possible. So there's some good, like I mean, we're all disciples of Christ, right? And discipleship is very important. In fact, I'm an advocate of discipleship. I think discipleship is one of the things that's missing in the church today, right? So that is good, like say foundationally, and the idea of also wanting me to be baptized as well is good, even though their understanding of baptism is that it's just an outward symbol of an inward confession, which I don't believe or is scriptural today, as from what I've learned now, but at the time I didn't know. But the way as well they went about it was a bit like, because they wanted to rush it. They wanted me to get baptized as quickly as possible. It's like they had a whole curriculum, within but at 12 weeks, they're gonna teach me their doctrines. Within 12 weeks, I have to be baptized, sort of thing, regardless of where I'm at. And I'd have different teachers, probably two, three teachers I was meeting up with weekly and stuff. And there was times where I was even letting them know, like, I don't actually think I understand this stuff. I don't think I get what's going on. I need more time and whatnot. So they probably just gave me one extra week, but that was about it. And I still had to get baptized. And when I did get baptized, I wasn't even fully ready, you know what I'm saying? But I felt like I had to do it because if I say no, they're probably going to question me, like, why is he not wanting to? So I kind of felt coerced into it, even though you could say they didn't force me, but it did feel like they coerced me into it. That's one of the reasons why I never felt like that baptism was legitimate thankfully, by the grace of God, I have now been baptized, which I can get into later on as well. And I wouldn't say rebaptized because if the first one was nullified, I wouldn't even count it as a first baptism. As again, we're only baptized once. We only need to be baptized once, not multiple times anyway. But yeah, so that was one thing. Then on top of that as well, there was another thing that they did with confession. Again, confession is biblical, right? It's good to confess our sins to God for forgiveness and to confess to other believers so we can be healed, right? But the way they do it is like we're sitting at a big table, sorry, in a circle, we're all confessing the sins we've committed in the week and stuff like that. And it's like this element of condemnation or shame, that was attached to it. It felt like anyway, like or this like they this judgmental, like hypocritical sort of judgment and stuff like that. That it felt that's what I felt. And I just felt like this is strange, this is weird. Like what? you know, and then on top of that as well, they, want you to only mingle with the women, well, the people of the opposite sex within that church because they want you to marry people. Though they didn't explicitly say this, I only learned this and found this out later. I was like, they want you to only marry people within that church too. Do you get what I'm saying, right? And I've learned, so there's another branch of this church which came out of came out of this church and formed its own new church, right? Where they even, from what I've learned, is they're even more intense. Where it's like sometimes they would even have five marriages in a day, where it's all people members of the church. It's like they're forced to marry each other and stuff like that. It's really crazy stuff. And it's like, though again, they don't do it so overtly, which is so outwardly, they kind of covert with it. It's like they're trying to get you to kind of like distance yourself from like family and friends, and make them your new, family. And it was so subtle that if you're not really like attentive to these sort of things, you just all of a sudden find yourself you've drifted away from all the people you knew before. And they try and justify it, using scripture as well and stuff like that. And yeah, so just things. And then I think there was now a woman there who she was Polish and she had a child. I think she was Polish, if I remember correctly. She had a child and she was attending the church. But I remember she was share some of the suspicions she had as well. And I was sharing mine with her too. I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not the only one then that's having some of these suspicions. But she had a lot more understanding of scripture than I did at the time. And so she shared one experience where how the church was against speaking in tongues, because I think she was praying in tongues one time and she was basically condemned for praying in tongues. And then she also shared something, if I remember correctly, because we had this conversation on like WhatsApp, where she was I think spoke about dreams with the wife of the person who actually invited me to the church, right? And it's like they say they believe in dreams, but then when you speak about dreams, it's like no, God doesn't speak through dreams, sort of thing. So it's like they claim their theology is like yes, they believe in some of these things, but they don't really in practice. Do you get what I'm saying? And there's some other theological differences which I can't remember off by heart right now. But all of these things were just like, this is crazy. But again, because I wasn't so versed in this, I couldn't categorically say that this is a cult. I wasn't too sure. This actually woman actually introduced me to TLR for the first time at the time because that's when I think the first TLR movie came out. I never really watched it then.
What's TLR? What's that?
The Last Reformation. So there's a guy called Torben Sundergaard who is leading like a final reformation and stuff. And so it's later on in my when I came back to Christ for real that I actually was reintroduced to it. And that's when I guess my doctrine, I started to learn more, I started to grow in doctrine and learning true doctrine and stuff like that. The reason why I mentioned that is because that's where I got baptized. I got baptized at a TLI event, or yeah, recently actually. Um, but so yeah, so back then it was yeah, so I was just more suspicions and stuff like that. Then I share some of these things with my parents, and they also now also raising suspicions. So then I wanted them to come to the church now to see for themselves, and they also wanted me to invite my parents to the church too because they wanted to convert my parents to be their members and stuff like that. So then when my parents came, I also kind of like just saw the way they treated my parents too. It's like they're nice on the surface, but it's like behind closed doors. They will say things like, I can't remember the specific things they will say, but it's like they're speaking as if my parents, weren't Christians or believers and whatnot. They kind of like condemned my parents in a sense, right? And so I think that was where it drew the line for me. I was like, yeah, I'm leaving. And even when I wanted to leave, they didn't make it easy for me to leave as well. You know, they
How long were you
first
there for?
just a few months,
Oh,
probably from like September to January the following year, 2017. So I was 19 around the time. And so yeah, so around 6 months or so. So yeah, when I tried to leave, I told this guy that yeah, I don't want to continue in the church anymore, whatnot. Obviously he was trying to convince me to stay, but I was firm with it. So that's one thing I was as well, quite stubborn. So I was firm with it. So he knew he couldn't get through to me, so he sent someone else to get through. Same thing, same. Then he sent someone else again. So now I've had three people try to message me to convince me to stay. I'm still not having it. Then when they knew that wasn't working, then I came to my house, because he was picking me up from home to take me to church, so they knew where I lived. So he now came to my house one time, sat down with my parents, and I think the first time he came in, maybe no one was in or something like that. No one answered. Then the second time he came again, then I sat down with my parents, and my dad just told him straight up that to leave me alone, to not bother me again, and to cut off from me. Da, da, da. And then that's how I came out. So that was kind of like my experience. It's only later on when I finally came to Christ that I learned that, oh, like this. So I call them a cult, even though I didn't still know fully well that they are a cult. It's not until like a year or so ago that I've really found out that yeah, they're one of, quite a number of cults in the world today. There's a big so the branch that came out of them, that is I don't know if I should mention the name. On one hand, I do want to mention the name because I think it would be good if people are aware. Um, so on one hand, I'm sorry, yeah. So the branch that came out of this particular one, I believe, yeah, it's called LICC, and it stands for London International Christian Church, right? They're quite big and popular. They have a way of targeting young people because they're the most impressionable and stuff like that, yeah, and just so on and so forth. Because it's a testimony, I won't go too deep into it. But the one I went to was called ICOC, International Church of Christ. So they're similar, but they're now two completely different churches now, though they came out of each other, so yeah, it was crazy stuff. But now me coming now, I was angry with God because I was like, God, I was seeking you. I wanted to get to know you. And now you've brought me to this cult. Like, why would you do that to me? God, do you hate me? You must really hate me. So then I now said to myself, I'm gonna rebel against God. So I was like, God, fine. Everything I tried to stop myself from doing, because I wanted to, follow you. Like for example, I wanted to save my virginity to marriage. I wanted to get married to one woman and have all my children with one woman and stuff like that. I was like, God, no, I'm not gonna do that no more. And I'm just gonna do whatever I like. Even though at the same time I was still watching pornography, I was still masturbating, I still, struggled with lust and things like that. But I felt, because again, I thought Christianity was just rules and stuff like that. I was like, fine, God, I'm just going to live my life and do whatever. I'm just going to be rebellious. And but at the same time, in the back of my mind, it's like, okay, if you're real, if you're true, God, like sort of thing, maybe one day I'll come back to you. Maybe one day you'll bring me back to you. So I also still had that hope that I would come back because I had that fear of hell too. Just in case hell is real, I don't want to go there. But right now, I'm going to rebel because I'm still young. I can rebel. Everything I tried to hold myself back from doing, now I'm going to do. So I was like that prodigal son, I'm going to go away into the city now. And so it's from that point, that's when I now started, I had my first kiss with a girl. And then I lost my virginity. I started sleeping with different women. So I made it my goal to sleep with as many women as I could because, again, going back to like that, not seek having love from my dad, I wanted to find that love elsewhere. And one of the places I found that was in women. What I'm saying? They would feed my ego. They'll give me what I wanted as well. They'll make me feel good about myself and stuff like that. So and then I just made it my goal as well, to sleep with as many women as I could. Because again, it was like in the environment I was in now, in the secular music culture and stuff like that. That's what's promoted, sleeping around with women, sleep with as many as possible. It's okay for men to sleep around, duh, duh, duh. So that's the indoctrination I'm also receiving now as well. And I just go full blown. It's like, fine, So it's like now it's like, okay, even though I know there is a God in a sense, But for me now, I'm choosing to rebel. So there's no limits for me. I'll go as far as possible. Do you get what I'm saying? Even though there were some things I held back from initially, not necessarily because, I thought it was wrong, but just because I was thinking of, the potential side effects that it could have on me. I didn't see sleeping around as having any bad side effects on me, apart from maybe catching STDs, which I can avoid and whatnot and stuff like that, even though I wasn't as careful as I should have been. And things like that. But yeah, so like I didn't go straight into drugs and whatnot, but it's like over time I'm now mixing with more crowds of people that I wouldn't have in the past. So now they're, introducing me to like weed and some. I do weed, but I was like a casual or occasional smoker, only when other people do it. Because I knew people get addicted to it. I didn't want to get addicted to it, so I made sure I never knew any dealers or had any contact with anyone or anything like that. So I only do it if other people had it and, gave it to me. Then also drinking as well. Now I've started drinking. This is the first time I now started drinking because in my household before drinking was condemned, like there was no alcohol allowed. My parents don't drink or whatnot. They believe Christians can't drink. Of course, now I have a different theology to them. I don't believe drinking alcohol is a sin. I believe getting drunk is the sin, But yeah, but at the time anyway, so I started drinking and stuff like that, and getting drunk and going out to parties, to the club, doing all sorts, just going as wild as possible. I engaged in sexual orgies. There was a period where I was actually on OnlyFans as well, because on Twitter there's this very dark side to it where this is before it became X, and I think it's still continued now as well, where it's like there's something called either not safe for work Twitter or after dark sort of thing Twitter, where people just post explicit images and stuff like that, and videos of themselves. And so I was actually introduced to this by one of the girls I was, sleeping with at the time. And I thought, oh, okay, this gives me more access to even more women and stuff like that. So I engaged in it. And a couple of my friends found out at the time, which brought a bit of shame to me. And then I ended up kind of like distancing myself from them in some ways, but at the same time, they also started themselves from me too because they wanted me to stop because they didn't want to be associated with someone who does such things. But I didn't want to stop where I was at the time as well. They were also like nominal Christians, like I was sort of. We all believe in God, but really and truly, we're not really. You know, we don't really believe. So. But yeah, so our relationship was strained a bit. But then it was through one of those friends who went to my secondary school that I actually met the guy who actually led me to Christ and discipled me. So I met him that same year. I went to that church and I knew him. He was a few years older than me. I knew he was a Christian. He was a youth pastor at the time, I believe, and whatnot. So there were times he'll try and, speak with me about God, but, it's like I'm interested, but I'm not interested at the same time, because
Mm,
I'm enjoying this lifestyle, and whatnot. So he knew and understood that it's going to take time. So he's going to be patient. But because he also played football, at least we connected on that level. So he helps me out with football and stuff like that. So at least he can build that connection, that relationship, which God would eventually use years later. It wasn't immediately. So at that point as well, I was turned off to God. Again, even though I knew he existed, but I was turned off to God. So it's like I didn't even want to go to church or hear anything about church initially. But then after time, I just thought, just in case God truly is, real and, like, what I'm doing is really wrong, even I know it's wrong, it's like, okay, I'll just keep an open ear. Maybe someone will convince me, that what I'm doing is wild and I should stop, that I wasn't ready to stop. So God sent a few people to evangelize to me, and some of them they planted the seed. They loved me. They were patient with me. They encouraged me, to join in their fellowship and stuff like that. And I would go and whatnot. But I even made it clear to them, look, guys, I'm not really trying to join, but I'll come anywhere. I'll just listen. Maybe, thinking maybe they might say something that'll change me. Nothing really changed anything in my heart, but I was still willing to just be around them for some time, until eventually, what happened? I think. So initially it was just their fellowship I went to and whatnot, but then they invited me to the main church, which is also a popular church as well, which some believe is a cult. I haven't really gone too deep into discovering whether it is or not, but it does have some of those characteristics as well. Um, right. And yeah, it's quite a popular church. And yeah, it's again maybe this will be another time because this is a testimony video. So, but yeah, so literally. I think they invited me to the church. I eventually went to the church a year or so after or later, but I think it was when COVID hit, so I stopped going, and then I kind of like lost contact with them for some time. Then they tried to continue in 2021, the year after, but it wasn't really the same anymore. Now I'm even more deep into, the lifestyle of sin that I'm living. And it's like I'm not really interested in continuing that relationship. I give them excuses and whatnot. Even though I was also still now going to other churches as well, but they were all like nominal Christians, where it's like, okay, we all know we're living a life of sin, but we'll still go to church on a Sunday to just feel good about ourselves, sort of thing. So that's what I continue doing. And yeah, but then it got to the point where I'm now probably around 2022 or so. I'm not ever starting to think. I've never been like an atheist, or never have declared myself to be an atheist, right? Because growing up, my dad instilled this foundation in me that obviously that of course that God is real, the Bible is true. He actually though he didn't say explicitly create like talk about creationism, but he instilled creationism into me and to disregard evolution and the Big Bang because they're just theories and philosophies. They're not really science because he had a background in science, so he was able to help me with that. So even though I didn't really know or understand, I just took it because I trusted him. It was my dad, he knows. So I was even in religious studies classes, I was one of those like strong Christians. Though again, I didn't really believe, but it's like I was defending Christianity, whereas the atheists would give their arguments, and I would say, no, it did this and that. Atheism is for things like that. But yeah, but then now at this point, because I'm full blown into sin now and everything, just rebellion, I don't want to be held accountable for my actions, right? So now, because I know obviously we all have a conscience, we know what we're doing is wrong. Although the more I continued, the weaker my conscience gets, I don't have much conviction anymore. I'm giving over to a depraved mind. I don't see what's wrong with, sleeping around and whatnot. So now, but at the same time, I don't want to be held accountable just in case God is real or whatever. So I'm now starting to be open to ideas because I tried to consider atheism, but it just still didn't make enough sense to me because the conclusion is that if there is no God, there is no accountability. Everything goes, and but then I also see that creation, like just logic itself, is like a building is evidence of a builder, you know, and things like that. So it's like it just didn't make sense. But again, because I didn't want to be held accountable, part of me was like, I would love it for it to be true, but it doesn't still make sense to me. So then I was now more open to now things like the New Age belief, right? Where they
Right.
now involve Christ into it. So they talk about the Christ consciousness, and they'll talk about vibrations and things like that. So it brings some truth. So it's like, okay, so that's it. It all makes sense. So maybe it's not really God is real. Maybe we just came, if evolved. Maybe it's just a consciousness. Maybe it's just vibrations and this and that. And it's just Christ is not really a person. It's just So I was now believing this sort of stuff, right?
And this is all during COVID.
No, this is now a bit after COVID, like maybe 2022 times, right? A year before I came before I was led to Christ. And so that was now making sense to me at the time. But again, at the same time, God surrounded me with people who, even though they were some of them may have been nominal Christians, some did, believe and were fervent in it. So having them around as well, kind of like, I felt like a bit of shame in the sense I felt like I couldn't bring these ideas to them because they'll shut me down straight away. Do you get what I'm saying, right?
Mm.
But I'll still hang around with them because I still wanted to claim that I am a Christian. Do you get what I'm saying? And yeah, so I met these guys through social media. We used to do TikTok lives because though I wasn't the biggest on social media, I did acquire quite a bit of a following. My largest following was on TikTok, but I did have a few thousand on other social media platforms as well. So on
And what was
TikTok,
that through? Doing what?
it was a bunch of stuff. Initially, my whole plan and goal was to play football professionally. But when I realized I wasn't going to plan, I did play semi-professionally, but because I've re realized how difficult it really was to go professionally, I started to seek other avenues. I saw social media was now becoming popular. People are getting, popular on it, making money through it. So I saw that as an avenue. So initially, I wanted to make a YouTube channel predominantly about football. You know, just documenting my journey to professional football. And by the grace of God, I did have a video that went viral. got a few 100,000 views, and I gained quite a few thousand subscribers from it. But that was my only video that did well. Every other video didn't really do so well. And plus, I found it difficult balancing that with my work life and everything and personal life. So I wasn't able to maintain it either. But then on my other social media accounts, so like Instagram, I try to use that as like a modeling, platform. Like I'll post pictures of myself, videos, try to appear like a male model sort of thing. So I try to use each platform for different things for what I felt would gain the most traction. You know what I'm saying? So for YouTube was football, Instagram was like modeling and sort of thing. With Twitter. I had quite a few viral tweets, I knew the sort of tweets that would get, repost and reshare. So I kind of like join onto that. So I gained a few followers through that as well, and a few million views and stuff like that through Twitter. And now when TikTok now became popular, I tried to continue this pattern also because I kind of like understood the social media, like what goes viral and what didn't, you know. I struggled more with Instagram because Instagram is more of like, your personality and how you look. You know what I'm saying? So even though I did gain a few thousand followers from that, I didn't grow as much as the others. I didn't go as viral as much as the others. And the others were a bit easier to go viral on as well. So TikTok, again, I knew the type of videos that people would repost and would go viral. Oftentimes it's always either videos bashing the opposite sex, but though I try to do less of that, but it's more like it's sexual, sort of content or videos or tweets that are just, that's promoting that sort of stuff. And I know it goes viral. So those were the kind of videos I made on TikTok as well. So I did gain a few million views through that and whatnot. But then through that, I also now it's in a sense it attracted that Christian community. So initially though my videos were a bit wild, and weirdly enough, they didn't condemn me for it, which, was good in a sense. Like they showed me grace. You know what I'm saying? Though what I was doing was wrong. It's like they didn't give me that hypocritical Christian, sort of view, not view, um, for the lack of a better word, let's just say character, as I saw before, like, most Christians are hypocrites. They say this, but they live the complete opposite to what they say, sort of thing. But yeah, so like they joined me on TikTok lives and stuff. So eventually, it's like my TikTok lives now are becoming more Christian in nature because I'm having them around now. Do you get what I'm saying? Obviously, God, I believe God was kind of like using them to bring me back. But for me, it's like I let them speak. I didn't know much about Christianity, so I just let them speak and I listen. But because I've got quite a few views, I'll be the one hosting it and stuff like that. Because I also learned not to speak on something I don't know too much about because yeah, I don't want to mislead people and things like that. And if I did speak on it, I would let people know I'm not too sure and So I still kind of have that, in me as well. If I'm not too knowledgeable on something, I wouldn't speak on it, or I would just say clearly that this is my opinion, this is what I think, and I'm not too sure. You know, yeah. So that's kind of what happened. And also, I also had a business that I was trying to do with my friend as well. It was called Proverbs. He came up with the name. It's spelled differently, but it was inspired by the book of Proverbs because that was his favorite book at the time. And the platform was supposed to be like a networking platform where we, used to connect different people within similar industries, who may not find it easy to connect with one another, and also use it as a platform to share information about particular those industries or subjects. So we had different categories. We had like religion and faith, specifically Christianity. We had I think business category, social media category, or media category, entertainment. We had different sort of categories again. So again, it's like that was another way that I think God was trying to reach me. Plus, me and that friend, we had a group and we did Bible studies together and
Wow.
stuff like that as well. Weirdly enough, though, I still wasn't firm or solid in my faith. So I was always still kind of like in and around Christianity. I never, even though I was living a rebellious life, I was never fully removed from the faith in a sense. Um, yeah, so that's kind of like how things continued with that until I hit rock bottom. I hit a place where finally come to the end of myself, like the prodigal son. You know what I'm saying? He's blown up all his money, He has no more money left. He's now with the pigs and he just doesn't see himself continue with. Because before I wanted to be my own God. I wanted to be rebellious. I didn't want anyone to tell me what to do. I wanted to do what I wanted to do. I can steal if I wanted to steal. I can, do whatever. I didn't want it to be accountable to anyone. I wanted to enjoy the pleasures of life, the pleasures of sin. But I think at the same time, I started to also think as well, like Solomon discovered in Ecclesiastes, like all of this is in a sense pointless or meaningless. What's the end of it? Where does it go to? Because I knew the stark reality of death. I knew death is one thing that's guaranteed to all of us, right? And at least as far as my knowledge then, like yeah, like we're gonna die. So death would make me think a lot more about life because I still it's like okay, I didn't really go to the Bible to get the answers. I was trying to see if other people had the answers and whatnot, interestingly enough. But I thought like the atheists even don't really have the answers. No one has ever died and come back to life as far as my knowledge took me then. And like no one really knows. But at the same time, I've grown up with this Christian foundation of heaven and hell. And if hell is real, that's a place I don't want to go. That's a scary place, you know? So I would wrestle with this sort of thing, you know what I'm saying?
Mm,
And I just think like but if death is guaranteed, what's the point of life? It can't just be I'm a bunch of cells that evolved from this and that, because that's the agenda that's being pushed out. It's just random processes. Then life is meaningless, because that don't make sense, Or the fact that, okay, if let's say life has a meaning, but the meaning is whatever each of us make it, again, that don't really make sense because, okay, if my life is just for me to work and then die, what's the whole point of it? What's the whole point of building relationships? What's the whole point of even getting rich and famous and then die? I can't take it with me wherever I'm going. You know what I'm saying? So I'm having all of these questions. It's like there's so many questions I needed to answer that just didn't make sense. I'm trying to figure it all out. And then but I never went to the Bible because again, I was so easily like deceived as well because I was quite gullible to some degree. Um, Not in the sense, well, in one sense, I would believe everything, but in another sense, I wouldn't. So I had this, um, mentality of, just being open to different ideas, right? Because I didn't know truth as well, it's easy for me to be deceived, right? And yeah, and oftentimes it's like I guess I'll believe it until it's proven otherwise, basically. I use the approach of innocent to proven guilty, but more of like it's true until it's proven it's not true, sort of thing. Unless I know I have an idea that no, no, this can't be true. So that also made it difficult for me. And on top of that, because I was so open-minded, I found it difficult to go to scripture myself and get the answer from the Bible because I would always think, oh well, how am I sure it's not just me making it up, you know what I'm saying? Or, how am I sure it's just not my idea? Because at this point I've also learned that there's so many different Christian denominations, everyone thinks different things. How do I even know who to believe? I don't even know anymore, you know what I'm saying? So it's like I couldn't do it myself, sort of thing, you know. And I would also like kind of pray and ask God, like, or I'd hope, because I remember my friends would teach me like, if God could reveal himself to you or something like that, or ask me if God could reveal himself to you, how would you want him to reveal himself? Like, and I said like in the form of like a mentor who would actually teach me and guide me. And in a
mhm,
sense, that's also one thing I lacked from my dad, in one to some degree, because though he knew a lot, and there's a lot of things he could teach me. I feel like because of the difference in, our ages, our, background and upbringing, he found it difficult to relate with me on a level that I would understand. You
mhm.
know, I found him so far away. So I wanted someone who maybe closer in my age who understood me a little bit more, who could relate with me a bit more. That's what I'd have preferred. Do you get what I'm saying? So I was hoping God would reveal himself to me through that. And interestingly, God actually did do that, but it didn't come straight away. It came like a year or so later now at this point. Um, so I'm now just in a place of like there's so many questions, that need answering. And it's like now I'm a bit more open to it. But I literally had to come to the complete end of myself, before I could really be completely open to actually just hearing, okay,
Mm.
God, fine, I've tried it myself. I've tried every other avenue. There's all led to dead ends of destruction, you could say. Okay, fine, I'm open to hearing what you have to sort of say. So
Wow.
it was a series of events. It took a while. There's still other parts I haven't gone deeper into yet, which I'll probably go into to then bring it to the end to like where I'm at now today. Yeah, so
Wow. Wow. Wow.
it's been a journey.
So this is a perfect segue for so you had come to the end of yourself and
Yeah.
here you are now. You've got so many questions, you just not understanding what's going on, and you're trying
Yeah.
all these things, you got all these views on TikTok and hosting all these platforms and yada yada yada, but still it wasn't enough.
Yeah, it wasn't enough. I knew
Wow.
like there was truth. There's truth out there, but I just don't know what is truth. At this point, I was thinking, how am I even sure it's Christianity? Because that's just what I was just raised in. Maybe I've been indoctrinated, sort of thing. Maybe it's just because I grew up in Christianity. That's why I believe in the Christian God. You know what I'm saying? How am I sure it's not Islam or this and that? And also I still also think as well, because I used to somewhat buy into some of these atheist ideas, like, you know right and wrong is only kind of like it's subjective, is like what we make it sort of thing. And then but then so I would say like, well, I mean, if I don't think, having sleeping around is wrong or whatever, then it's not wrong. But at the same time, it's like sometimes my conscience is convicting me. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, I actually know this stuff is wrong. But why is that? Is it because of the way I was brought up? Or is there another reason? So yeah, like I said, so many questions, that needed answering. So but I knew there was truth out there. I just didn't know where it was from and how to find it. You know what I'm
Well,
saying?
we're gonna get
That's
into it in part four. So
yeah,
it's
yeah,
perfect. It's a perfect place to stop, and we jump into part four. All right.
yeah, yeah. Let's
Fantastic.
go.